follow up on some questions that I got about last week's episode, and we were talking around heart rate training zones in general and field testing. Now, the biggest thing is I got a couple of questions about what about the zones that my Garmin or my Polar give me straight out of the box. So if you get a device, what's going to happen is it's going to ask you for your age, for your training history. It's going to ask you for a bunch of different metrics, and what those do is they go into there and they come up with a formula which is essentially just your age predicted heart rate max, and then it uses that to give you some training zones. And so don't use those training zones. They're based off general population norms, and they're good for the general inactive population. But if you start to do even a sniff of exercise, especially as you get older, these norms don't usually hold true anymore. So the biggest thing is to do the field test that Nick talked about last week, and then take the zones that you calculate and actually program them into your device, whatever that might be. Now, you also need to do the field testing for individual disciplines. So if you're a triathlete or a multi-sporter, you can't just do one field test and use that heart rate zone. Let's say you do it for running. You can't go and use your running heart rate zones for biking or for swimming or for kayaking, because there's a difference in heart rate between each discipline due to the amount of muscle mass that you use and also how much your body is fighting gravity. So normally what happens is your running heart rates will be the highest because you're upright, you're working against gravity to get the blood circulating around your body. Next lowest will be your biking heart rates. They'll be a little bit lower because you're seated, you're not actually supporting your weight, and those will be roughly about 10 beats lower. And then in the kayak, they're about 10 beats lower again compared to biking on average. And then swimming will be lower still because you're flat in the water, and the water actually squeezes all of the blood to help it around your body, so your heart doesn't have to work as hard. So the key to that is make sure you do a field test for each discipline to get your heart rates dialed in. If you don't want to do a field test, there is actually a tricky workaround. If you don't want to do a field test, but you have accumulated a lot of training data, either in Strava or on Training Peaks, what you can actually do is go back and have a look at your training graphs and pick out that 20-minute heart rate, your peak 20-minute heart rate from however long you've been collecting the data, and you can use that in your calculations for your training zones, because that's going to be your threshold heart rate. Ideal if you go and do a field test, because we don't know how old that heart rate data is, but it's a good place to start. If you've got any other questions that you want us to clarify, because we do cover a lot of ground in some of these episodes, if something didn't quite make sense to you, feel free to hit me up and we will dig into it a little bit more.